I've been talking and thinking a lot about the joy that music brings and the joy that music performance brings. And we all know those moments where everything locks together and it's just magic. Okay. And if you have a band that should be playing a grade 2 or 3 and you're playing, George Washington Bridge, those moments are not going to happen. They're just not going to happen. And what brings the students back is that joy. It's about people, and it's about more than notes. It's about more than marching band charts. It's about people. And if you foster those relationships and they trust you, a good band director, good choir director, orchestra director, those students will follow you anywhere if they trust you and they know that you have their best interests at heart.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the beast of the marching arts. Thanks for listening to the Marching Roundtable podcast. So excited to be talking to John Fulton today. Hey John, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're here. We're going to talk about 3 things you wish you'd known when you first started teaching. This has been such interesting conversations. And anytime I run across somebody who obviously has had a great career, knows so much, made a big impact, I'm like, oh, I'd like to talk to him about this. I always, whoever it is. So I'm really happy we connected, of course, over the podcast series that we did about Robert W. Smith. Everybody, if you didn't hear that conversation which John was on, I hope you'll go find those podcasts and listen. So John, thanks for being a part of those.
Well, thank you. It was my honor, and it was my pleasure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people know who you are for sure, but I'm going to ask you to sort of introduce yourself briefly. Tell us a little bit about your history in this whole world of music ed.
Well, I graduated from the University of South Florida in 1980. Oh goodness, 1980, and became a band director. Finally settled at Northeast High School in Pinellas County, which is where I met Robert, and I met Frank Williams as well. Taught there for several years, and then I went into the fundraising business for 20 years, and then came back to teaching at Eastlake High School, my last teaching job, for 10 years, and then went back to fundraising. And now I'm doing fundraising, and a couple of days a week I'm working with this incredible band program, Jackson High School in Jackson, Missouri. They let me work with their low brass, and I'm just having the time of my life. So, and that's where I am now. So
that's wonderful. Well, they're lucky to have you there, I'm sure, and that's wonderful that you're still involved and still sharing your expertise, and a very interesting career. And of course, you made huge impacts with those programs that when you were teaching, for sure. Okay, so I asked you to think about 3 things you wish you had known when you first started teaching. I'm really interested what you had to say. What was the first one that came to mind?
First one that came to mind is never underestimate the power you have for good or for ill in your position. And sometimes the attitude of the director is all about win at all cost, play perfect, all these kind of things, that we forget about the humanity that we're teaching. And I, early on, I made some mistakes where I was, just all I cared about was getting all the notes, from here to there, and sometimes lost track of the students, lost track of who they were. So just remember that probably there's no one else in your building that has the potential for a positive effect. A couple of times I've seen, I've seen it done exactly the wrong way. I happened to witness a band director walk into a band room, and he told the band, and as they're sitting, and say, "You guys are really bad. You guys are just not good, and I'm here to fix you." And so, human beings being who they are, I don't think he ever got the room back, and he only stayed there for a year or so. And then I've seen at marching band competitions, I saw a band in particular, they didn't win. And the band director thought they should win. And so afterwards, in public and very loud, he told them how bad they were, and they didn't work hard enough. They didn't deserve to be in his band program. And you could see about 120 amazing people, and you could see their shoulders slump, and then they got smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, never underestimate the power of a positive word. Your students may not be doing everything that you want them to do, but they're doing some things you want them to do, and recognize those and move on.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's amazing. I think a lot of us when we're just out of college, we sort of have a lot to prove. We want to go out there and do all these great things, and yeah, the understanding and reminding yourself that it's really, you're just teaching a bunch of kids how to be better kids and how to be better
Yeah.
citizens and how to be, that's what it really comes down to. So what was there a certain moment when you sort of realized, oh wow, I need to focus differently?
There was, and I'm a little embarrassed to tell you, but we were in wind ensemble season, and I was just focusing on getting that superior because that's the only thing that mattered to me at that time. That's not really true, but it's somewhat true. And I had a student come into me who was an all-state and all-county flute player, amazing musician, and she said, "Mr. Fulton, I'm going to an open house at a university, for the same day as our next evening rehearsal, because I'm looking forward to college and things like that." And I just unloaded on her. I said, how could you do this and she left the room in tears, and I've never gotten over that, to be honest. And I made it right with her. I think I made it right with her. As
Sure.
luck would have it, she ended up being a parent at the last school I taught at, and she came in the band room and she was all smiles. And I apologized one more time to her, and she looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" So, but that devastated me, and I started examining, what's really important. So,
That's great. No, I think it's, listen, I think even when we act out and we're not being our best, the students and parents still realize you're trying to do the right thing by them. And so I think they're very willing to forgive and let you make a mistake and move on. And I'm sure that's what happened in this instance. And um, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, we all have those, right? Those times when we were like, okay, we had a little wake up call because we realized, wow, I really did that wrong.
yeah.
And if you can make it right and then move on, I think everybody's okay. So that's great. Okay, I love that first one, reminding yourself of that impact. That's great. Okay, what's another one?
The next one is use the resources around you. Invite other people into your room. Now, the resources around me were pretty unique. It was Robert W. Smith, Frank T. Williams, Jerry Kelsey, people like that. And so we were constantly in each other's band rooms. I think my band students weren't really clear who their band director was. Was it Robert? Was it Frank? Was it me? Because we were constantly in front of each other's bands, listening and helping. Once again, without regard of who's going to win, but how can we make each other better? My last teaching job, I was very lucky. Well, another aspect of that is use the people in your performing arts department. Make sure that you play nice with them and work together. I've seen people be territorial. I've seen people be, guarded against. Well, that tuba player is also a fine tenor, and I don't want the choir director to have my. And at Eastlake, there was none of that. We had Rob Knable for choir, Brad Brady for drama. We had Steve Posen for percussion. We had Robin Benoit was our middle school feeder, and Chip Wood, who's very well known in band circles. Chip Wood was the orchestra teacher, and we were there for each other, constantly there for each other, and we worked out scheduling conflicts, and it just made everything better. It just made everything better. So I had a lot of students that were drama, choir, and band, and and it was never an issue. It was never an issue because we were collegial enough, and we would work together to iron out scheduling problems. But I'm a much better teacher because I was able to watch master teachers teach. And and we were all at Eastlake, we were all excited about each other's programs and big supporters. And so if you have the opportunity to work together as a department, I think it just lifts everybody.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And it's a fine arts department,
Yeah.
right? And how that water's the tides lifting all the boats, and of course lifting the whole school. And that's wonderful that you guys had that that ability to work together. You know, John, I have to admit, one of my big failings was when I was first starting out, my first couple of years, my first few years of teaching, I was very nervous about bringing other people into my band room because I thought that my students would realize all the stuff I didn't know. Right. I mean, this was my big failing, and it's sort of
I
another way of saying, like,
exactly.
I'm impressed if you were comfortable enough to bring in all these other smart people around you. I was very nervous about that, and finally the day it dawned on me that my kids didn't care about all the stuff I didn't know. They just knew that I loved them and I was trying so hard. Once I learned that, I was so much better.
Well, I certainly started off that way, and it took a while for me to. I felt exactly the same way you did. Well, what if they hear something I didn't hear, and what am I going to be embarrassed? And once I got past that,
Yeah.
because I realized, we all have things to share with each other, and that, and when I had guest conductors come in, I would write notes down, and I would take things from them and say, well, one of my favorites, Dr. Owen Bradley, I was watching him work his band one day, and he said, "You guys are giving me baseball notes, and I want M&M notes." And I went, "Wow, I like that." And so I wrote that
Yeah.
down, and so
Oh, yeah.
he made a picture for them of what he truly wanted, and it was just awesome. So
Wow, that's so clear in my head. I know exactly
yeah,
what that means, you know? That's
yeah,
such a fantastic analogy. Yeah, I love it. Okay.
yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, all right. What's the third one?
The third one is a two-parter. When I was a young band director, I wanted to force feed all the music that I love to my students, whether they were ready for it or not. And so,
Hmm.
there was an unrecognizable First Suite in E flat. There was an unrecognizable George Washington Bridge, things like that, because I felt like if I make them play great music, or I put great music in front of them, they're gonna, and that's partially true, but it's a process. And there's great music at all different levels. There's wonderful music at all different levels. And if you use those different grade levels as a stepping stone to get the band where you think they ought to be, that's otherwise you're frustrating them, and you're taking some of the joy out of that. Uh, I've been talking and thinking a lot about the joy that music brings and the joy that music performance brings, and we all know those moments where everything locks together and it's just magic. Okay, and if you have a band that should be playing a grade 2 or 3, and you're playing, George Washington Bridge, those moments are not going to happen. They're just not going to happen. And what brings the students back is that joy. That feeling of everything clicking together and just being a wonderful experience. And I also discovered that the students may not know that that's what's going on. They have a big smile on their face. And I said, well, why are you smiling? Well, that really sounded great and it felt good. And so you have to connect them with that aesthetic experience that they're having. So the other part of that, part B, is sight read every day. Um,
Mm.
one of my jobs I went to, they couldn't read. They could not read, and therefore we were not going to be able to play music very well. So every day we sight read something every day, and raise the level. So we got to the point where I could put a grade 5 on their stand and they could sight read it, and that didn't happen. That certainly didn't happen the first day. But sight reading is absolutely fundamental to grow in your program, in my opinion. So.
That's fantastic advice. I think that's great. And yeah, they have to learn how to read fast and they know, learn their instrument in that way. That's great advice. I see that's one of those things, John, that I think a lot of people think, oh, I just don't have time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like they just think, I don't have time for that. I got to learn all this music, whatever. But as you clearly know, and you've just demonstrated, learning to do that allows them to learn the other music faster. You're teaching them all kinds of principles and things as they're sight reading. But I think it's one of those things that people are afraid of the time.
But it pays off. It just pays off in dividends. And I actually heard an all-county conductor one year, and Frank and Robert and I were there, and the conductor said, well, you know what, we don't have time to tune. Let's just start playing. And it was like, what? You don't have time to tune? Okay. And
Wow.
yeah, that was our reaction. We actually walked out of the rehearsal, so and got in trouble. Yeah, our music supervisor, called us on the carpet the next day. But yeah, there's certain fundamentals that you have to take care of, or you're never going to be able to build on that foundation.
Well, yeah, but that's one of those basic things I think is true about life in general. Is like you learn that the more you can learn those basic, you can become a master at those basic things of life. It's like I finally learned it's so much easier just to keep my house clean all the time. you know, and to wait till somebody's coming over and then go through. You know what I mean? Like, and part of it's because I'm now have a bed and breakfast where people can show up at any time, and that's really helpful to that concept. But like, it's so much easier to sort of always put things away. Like, how long did it take me to finally learn that? But that's kind of the same kind of principle.
Yeah. No, absolutely agree. No, I agree with that. But yeah, so those are my three. The
It's great.
Okay, the fourth little one I learned from Jerry Kelsey early on at Suncoast, and that was listen for the overtones. And I had been a band director for 3 or 4 years, and I knew what overtones were. I knew what the overtone series, things like that. But we were playing we were playing a G, G bugles, and we are playing an open G. And Jerry said, "Listen to that overtone." And I went, "What are you talking about?" And it was a perfect fifth above the horn line. So from that point on, I started listening for the overtones, and I asked my students to listen for the overtones. And okay, in order to hear that, you have to be playing in tune, and you have to be playing with good sound. And so when when the whole band is listening and trying to make that thing happen, they get excited about it. And so if you hear the great drum corps, the great brass lines, and there's playing a unison note, that's one of the reasons why that few amount of horns can make that huge sound, is because they reinforce each other with those overtones. So that was my last thought. So
I love that little bonus, everybody. That's great. No, these are great points. Thank you for taking the time to think about it and then share them with me and with everybody who's listening. I thought they were all really helpful and smart things. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sort of, it's hard to sort of say, well, here's all the things I didn't know, but that's sort of what we're talking about, right? Like, here's all the things I didn't know, and if maybe somebody else can move past that a little bit faster, it would be worth all this sharing.
No, agreed. I think it'd be great. So
Anything you want to say in closing, John?
Just well, gosh, I didn't think about that, but just
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, no, that's okay. My number one point was my first point, and that is it's about people, and it's about more than notes. It's about more than marching band charts. It's about people, and if you foster those relationships and they trust you, a good band director, good choir director, orchestra director, those students will follow you anywhere if they trust you and they know that you have their best interests at heart.
Yeah, great advice. I love that very much. John, thank you for taking time to share this with me. It's been fun talking to you.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and thank you so much.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.